Welcome back to Radio Channel 1471. I'm your... Wait, let me check. I'm actually not your host for today. For today's episode number 27, here on the Radio Channel 1471, the podcast channel? Show, depending on where you're listening to this. Yeah, I'm not your host today. That honor actually goes to AG. AG the Yeen. Sorry for all the background noise. I'm moving a couple things here and there. So you might have noticed, one, there's kind of a gap between last episode and this episode. Well, I'll explain all that in the future episode, the next episode. I've actually been in a tad bit of a hiatus. I've been busy with quite a few things. Just a little summary of all the things that's happened between last episode and this episode. I now have a driver's license. I have a computer that is coming in the mail, but was delayed a whole month, which was not very great. My birthday was back in April. I got a Chemex coffee maker, pour over. I don't really know what you would describe it as other than, well, a Chemex. What else happened? Oh, we might be moving to a different state pretty soon here, so I can't guarantee there's going to be a new episode anytime soon. We've already been packing a lot of stuff, selling a lot of stuff. It's kind of going quick, but at the same time not. What else happened? Oh yeah, school. School ended. It's summer break, so 2/3 of summer break is already almost gone, though. Sorry for that. A lot of stuff's been going on. Other than that, I can't overly think of stuff on the top of my head. I mean, I guess I got a couple cassettes. I'll be talking about those in the future episodes. And that's really all I have to say, other than I'll see you soon, maybe. Hope you enjoy this episode. Once again, it's hosted by AG, the Yeen. I'm going to let AG take it from here. Don't want to take up too much time, since this is, of course, his episode. And thank you, AG, for volunteering yourself to do this episode. It was actually very nice of you. Very good. You did pretty good. Yeah. Goodbye.
Welcome back, Radio Channel 41. I'm your host, AG Yeen. You're the listener, and this is the podcast. This is podcast number 27, and I'd like to thank you for everybody who is tuning in. Today, I'll be substituting for Sterling's podcast, and I feel honored that he entrusted me to run the podcast for him while he is away. I do believe that he is out with family on vacation. He never really specified where, but you know what? I hope he's having a great time. And I hope all of you are enjoying yourselves so far, tuning in to the podcast, number 27. And today, I'd like to continue Sterling's tradition of pairing a music track with a drink. And today, I'd like to pair a wonderful song by indie ambient artist Washed Out and their song It All Feels Right with one of my favorite drinks, the Strawberry Acai. And I know some of you might recognize that drink from Starbucks, and I know some of you may have mixed feelings about Starbucks, but I will tell you that that is probably one of their best drinks from that restaurant, at least in my humble opinion, at least. So, in that case, today we're just going to be talking about multiple random different topics, and nothing too extreme, of course, because this is a relaxed podcast, and I know that's the way Sterling would want it. And so, let's go ahead and talk about binaural recording, which is actually something I'm actually quite interested in. I wouldn't consider myself an expert in binaural audio. However, I do know the very basic attributes of which it entails. And binaural recording is different from stereo recording. And I see a lot of people on YouTube, especially people who do ASMR sorts of videos, that they claim that that there's an ASMR like quality to their videos. However, a lot of the times they're using microphones like the Blue Yeti or using some other microphone, and they do the usual, the tapping and the whispering and things of that sort. And that's fine and good and all, but in my personal opinion, it's when they use binaural microphones. When they use binaural microphones, that I believe that's when it really elevates the ASMR to a different level. Because as opposed to stereo audio, binaural audio actually emulates the sound field of the human ear. And so when somebody plays a sound, it sounds like it's actually coming from around you, and you have a sense of 360. You have like a sense of 360 degree space, simulated space of the surroundings around you. And the key to having good binaural audio is that usually you either want to use microphones that are either fitted into a real human ears, or you get a dummy head and you place the microphones within the ear canal, and then the sound, the mold of the ears will direct the sound into a way that sounds realistic to human hearing. I wouldn't know the exact the big technicalities of it, but I do know that is generally how it works. And I did actually purchase a pair of binaural microphones myself. It was the Sound Professionals MS TFB-2, and unfortunately, one of the microphones, I believe it was the left microphone, actually shortened out. And so I either have to purchase a new pair or send it back to the manufacturer so it can be repaired. But I will say that all you had to do with those microphones is that it's basically like a pair of it's basically like wearing oversized hearing aids. You just put them in your ear, and then you attach them to a sound recorder. In my case, I have I believe it's an Olympus LS10S sound recorder, also known as a PCM recorder, since PCM means dot wave files, which is what it records to, which is, of course, lossless. And one of the keys to having good sound quality is to record to lossless formats like .wav or FLAC files or FLAC files. And so, in regards to the sound quality of those microphones, I actually wasn't very... I was actually a little bit skeptical, because I did make sure to listen to audio samples from Sound Professionals, and most of the samples were from a lower tier model, which has a higher self noise, and self noise is the noise that is generated by the microphone itself. And sometimes if the self noise is loud enough, you can hear it as like a hissing sound, and it can become distracting if you want a clear recording, and you want as much dynamic range, and you want as best of signal to noise ratio as you want. And signal to noise ratio is, you want it to be you want the signal to noise ratio to be as high as possible, because if you have too much noise in your recording, like too much hiss, or it can also refer to like background noise, like say if you're trying to record somewhere out in nature and you're trying to record bird sounds, or trying to record nature sounds, and there's planes getting into, or like cars passing by that are disrupting it, that would be considered noise. And also signal noise ratio can also be if you're not close enough to your subject. And so the closer you are to closer you place your microphone to the subject, the better the signal to noise ratio will be. And the same is applied even to just regular microphones, like this condenser microphone that I'm using right here, the Neat Worker Bee, which I find to be a fantastic condenser microphone. I believe me, it only costed me $89, and I do know that's a little bit steep for some people. But there are condenser microphones that actually go upwards up into the 500s, and when you talk about, and sometimes like with the Neumann microphones, which are used in studio recordings, those can go upwards into the tens of thousands of dollars. And some people have said this microphone allegedly sounds just as good as a Neumann, or sounds as good as a Tascam or an Audio Technica, or the Shure SM7B, which is a very a very popular podcast microphone, which usually goes for I think $500 or $600. And that is actually a dynamic microphone, that the Shure SM7B, and it actually is probably one of the most demanding microphones, because for condenser microphones, even though it's not a condenser microphone, condenser microphones require 48 volts of phantom power, and the Shure SM7B, I'm pretty sure, is a dynamic microphone, which has a different capsule from condenser microphones, in which dynamic microphones are more directional, and they block out less of the room ambience from either in front or behind the microphone. And so that's why dynamic microphones are used in concerts, so the sound of the other instruments or anything, or the sound of the crowd, doesn't leak into the mic where the vocalist is singing in, or where the instrument is playing. So you don't have feedback loops and things of that sort. But to get back on the track of the SM7B, it's one of the most demanding microphones because it requires you to put the gain up so high, and you got to have a really high quality. I'm trying to remember the word for it. I literally have it right in front of me here. You got to have a really good audio interface in order to have the gain up for the SM7B. It just requires so much gain in order to get a good signal to noise ratio. And a lot of people, when it comes to their Focusrite audio interfaces, which are usually the most affordable audio interfaces, and you need an audio interface if you want to use high quality microphones for podcasting or music recording. And for me, I'm using the Motu M2, which has been a wonderful, wonderful audio interface. I believe it has a sample rate of 192,000 kilohertz. It has 2 XLR ports, which can also serve as, I forgot exactly the size of the microphone, but I believe it's the 1/4-inch microphone input. And it also has speaker outputs, and it has a headphone input, which also has the computer sounds go through the audio interface. And so I can actually listen to videos and listen to music through my computer, where it goes out of the computer into the audio interface, and then brings it into the headphones. And also has a separate speaker volume knob and separate headphone knob, and so I don't have to continuously unplug different things in order to use my headphones or my speakers. But in any case, I believe the Motu would be able to have enough gain to power the SM7B, which, like I said, is one of the most popular podcasting microphones. But I think I went off on a very considerable tangent. So I'd like to go back and talk about binaural audio, which is the original topic. And so I listened to sound samples of one of the other Sound Professional's binaural microphones, which was, I believe, is the SP TFB 2, I believe is the model number. And of course, when it comes to binaural audio, you want to make sure you have a good signal to noise ratio. Make sure you're close to your subjects. But also, one of the things that's important is just make sure that your microphone doesn't have has very low self noise. And the MS version of those binaural microphones did have. When I first used that microphone, I just plugged it into the microphone input. And one of the most important parts about using in-ear binaural microphones that you put in your own ears is that you got to make sure that you have a sound recorder or have something that's able to power the microphones, because they do require a little bit of voltage in order to function. And the good part about a lot of portable sound recorders is that they actually do come in with plug-in power. And sometimes it's either turned on by default, or you have to turn it on in the menu. I forgot exactly what was the case for my Olympus, but I believe I had to turn it on in the menu. And once I finally used those binaural microphones, I was actually really surprised I was blown away by the sound quality because they didn't look like very high quality microphones just by looking at them. It was just plastic with little thin wires, and then it all terminated into this, like a semi high quality looking like earbud look cord of sorts. And of course it goes, and then it ends in a 33.5 millimeter audio jack at the end. And so it was nothing impressive looking. It just looked like oversized, glorified, hearing aids of sort, I guess is how you would put it. But once I listened to sound samples with those microphones, I was blown away by the sound quality. Because I always pursued for my video making to have the highest quality audio possible, while also keeping a good, while also staying under budget. Because if it's one thing that's, I would stress to anybody who's listening, that if you're going to start a podcast, or if you're going to do field recording or record music, definitely don't be afraid to try to utilize the most out of the equipment that you currently use. Because even if it's just your phone, or if you just have a karaoke microphone laying around, or if you say perhaps go to a thrift store such as Goodwill and you so happen to find a microphone, and if it works, make sure to buy it. And just using any audio equipment that you already have because I guarantee that sometimes in a number of cases that you will actually find that there are actually ways of making these cheap pieces of equipment actually do a very considerable job in recording audio. It's just a matter of selecting the right settings and using the right techniques in order to make it work. And when you feel ready, and when you really need to upgrade your hardware, upgrade your equipment in order to get better sound quality, or to just to upgrade your gear, I would strongly advise you to do it gradually. Because if there's one thing when it comes to the podcasting community, and when it comes to the music recording or sound or field recording community, is that people always want to buy the most highest price, the highest value audio equipment, which can go upwards to over $1,000, like $500 and upwards into the thousands easily. And when it comes to XLR microphones, and just the cost of the equipment can exponentially increase, because if you say you really like the sound quality of this one microphone, but it's a mono microphone, and you want to get a stereo image, one thing you have to do is that you buy another pair, like say the microphone was already $500, and then you buy a second one, so you have a stereo pair, and that's another $500. And then you have to pay for a stand to keep the microphones attached. And you got to have a special stand so that, because usually when it comes to two mono microphones, and when you mic them to create a stereo image, you have to put them in a certain angle. You got to adjust them in a certain angle so it has a certain amount of space to it. So some people cross them and put them at a 90-degree angle, or some people do it 180 and they put them the microphones directly away from each other but still next to each other. If I had a diagram of this, it would make a lot more sense. And of course the stands, in order to do that, the stands specifically to hold two pairs of microphones like that, those can cost a lot too. And not only that, you also got to keep in mind the sound recorder you want to use. And not too many sound recorders, at least not too many ones that are cheap, come with two XLR inputs. And so if you're needing to buy a portable sound recorder, because you can't just bring an audio interface with you. Audio interfaces are meant to stay at home and be used as used at your desktop or in a studio setting. But if you're out in the field and you're recording, you need to use something that's portable. And I believe Tascam has one. I think Olympus has another one that offers two XLR inputs. And those can go for a lot of money. And by that time, you're probably spending over $1,500, $2,000, maybe even $3,000 or plus dollars just for all that equipment, and it can really add up. And so that's why it comes to my original point that I stress that you should always start with cheaper equipment first, and don't worry about having to buy the best and most expensive equipment, especially if you're really in a pinch and you really need to save money, because I know not everybody needs that money. And having these desirable high quality audio equipment, despite how great it can sound, sometimes you can buy things of comparable sound quality for less money. And that was the case for this microphone, because this particular microphone, the Neat Worker Bee that I'm using right now for this podcast, the whole set that came with it only costed $89, and it came with the microphone. It came with a pop filter. It came with a shock mount, so whenever you tap on the desk or tap on the boom arm, it won't the vibrations won't be as bad because it absorbs the shocks. And also it came. Let's see. It also came with a few other things, but those three things right there: the pop filter, and the shock mount, and no. I think I said three things. Well, I meant to say two things. I did have to buy the XLR cable for the microphone separately, and I made sure to get the Neat branded XLR microphone. Not only so that it would match with the microphone, because the color of this microphone is the color of a bee, hence the Neat King Bee name. And it is black and yellow and a little bit of white here, but mostly black and yellow. And the cord is also black and yellow as well. And not only does it match with the microphone itself, but it's also nylon braided, and it's a very sturdy, it's a very long cord, and so I can wrap this cord all like behind my desk so it isn't hanging out everywhere, and I don't have to worry about this cable shortening out or have to worry about signals intruding into the XLR cable. Because if you have cheap cable for anything, whether it be a headphone cable or an XLR cable or any audio cable at all, if it's not shielded, if there's not ample shielding to the audio cable, you could have interference. You could have a buzzing noise. You could hear just white noise in the background, and sometimes it can get really distracting and really mess with your audio signal. And you also got to make sure you don't have like other things around, such as like phones around your audio cables, because I did have my phone around. There might have been a little interference a little bit earlier in this podcast, but I made sure to get my phone out of the way as soon as I could, because I needed to look at my phone in order to look at a few notes of mine. But in that case, make sure you get good quality audio cable. That's for sure. To avoid having intrusive signals get into your recordings or get into your speakers as you're trying to listen to music. But also at the same time, don't buy the most premium cables, because usually anything like something that costs like $10-$20, that's good enough and it will do you just fine. So definitely don't overspend when it comes to cables. And I believe this XLR cable actually costed around, I think it was like $30 or $40, but that's only because it's so thick. It's very well shielded. It's nylon braided, so it isn't gonna bust anytime soon. At least I hope so. But in any case, I guess the next topic I could go to is just the topic of podcasts in general. And so, believe it or not, Sterling actually heard that I did podcasts in the past, and something I learned while doing a podcast is that there's so many different ways that you can approach making a podcast, and it's not the same as it used to be back in the early days of the internet. because I do believe there were a few podcasts in the early 2000s, but the way they were distributed at the time is so much more different than it is now. Because back in those days, people's bandwidth wasn't, and internet speeds just weren't nearly as fast as they are now. For a lot of people back then, a broadband, I believe, wasn't really, broadband internet wasn't really a thing at the time. And so, before broadband internet, a lot of people used something called dial-up. And for the older listeners out there, you will remember what dial-up is. And for some of you, maybe you were a bit younger, maybe you know the dial-up sound for maybe some silly parody videos or something, or things of that sort. But dial-up, basically, you had to use the phone line in order to access the internet. So if somebody was on the phone, you cannot access the internet because the signal would be used up by the landline. And so, and of course, dial-up internet, despite how slow it could be, and in most cases it was quite slow, you had to pay a considerable amount of money in order to access the internet. And back then you had things like American Online, I believe there was Netscape, and there were a few other providers at the time. And the cost to use the internet was exponentially high. And if you thought it was high then, well, you were paying premium price for internet at a very slow speed. But people still managed to make it work. People started creating forums. People started creating all sorts of different websites to host their interests. Some people even managed to do early live streams. Like I believe one of the earliest examples of a live stream was actually, I believe it was a university student that had a very early webcam, and they pointed it at their aquarium. And I believe that was the longest running live stream up until recently. I think I heard that it got recently discontinued, I think a few years ago. And I believe there actually still is one where it's facing out a window that started in the 90s that I believe is still active. But don't take my word for it, because sometimes a lot of things just suddenly sometimes when I go back and look for like world records when it comes to internet things, sometimes when you go back, it's just like, oh wow, they finally ended it like a year or two ago. And so definitely make sure to do your research before you before you go out to claim anything, especially when it comes to like world records and things of that sort. But to get back on my on the topic, the internet was so much more different back in the early 2000s, and even though I was very young at the time, the internet, I just remember it was just a lot more basic. The internet pages used to be a lot more customized, because when it came to personal websites, a lot of people liked to go crazy with the text and the animations, and sometimes it would play music, and you didn't know how to turn it off. And it could be a little bit obnoxious because you just couldn't turn off the music. Of course, Flash was still a thing, and that got recently discontinued, I believe, a year ago. After over 2 decades of use, they finally discontinued Adobe Flash, which is very unfortunate. But they did create a very massive. There was a very massive archive of Flash games that was created. I forgot exactly what it was called, but I do know it's a massive, massive archive of almost every Flash game that you can think of. And of course, you can still find browsers, and you can find other ways of downloading Flash files and playing them locally on your computer. But in any case, the internet, I just remember, was so much different back then. And I remember the internet before like YouTube and Facebook was around. And even though I was a little kid, I just remember going to random different websites and just seeing these colorful graphics and just seeing all these quirky designs that people made for their personal websites at the time. And it was just a very different place. And one of the main things I actually did on the internet back then. It was actually go to find information on weather, because I am very much a weather nerd, and I am actually going to university to study atmospheric sciences, or more commonly known as meteorology. And it's something I've been fascinated with ever since I was a kid. And it was one of the earliest things I went on the internet to go look for, was to look at pictures of lightning, look for pictures of tornadoes and hurricanes and all sorts of different severe weather types. And it just fascinated me that I could access all of these things at my fingertips. But at the same time, it still wasn't really all that impressive, because it was a pain trying to watch some of these videos, because back then you had to use things like Flash Player, you had to use QuickTime, you had to download. Sometimes it would take forever to download just little small clips of video or audio. And to get back to my point of podcasts, that's actually a similar way of how they used to be distributed. So people would record a podcast, and then they would upload it to their website. And this was before like iTunes or things like that. And they would upload it as an MP3 or some other audio file at the time. And then they would upload it to their website, and you had to download it to your computer in order to listen to the podcast. And for a lot of cases, these podcasts, you actually had to pay money in order to buy these audio files. Excuse me. And it was a whole different way of distributing streams at the time. And it couldn't be any more different back then. And now in the age of broadband internet, where we have 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and we have super high speed internet using fiber optic cables and using all sorts of different new technologies in order to increase our internet speeds. It's just, the internet has never been faster and never been more available to more people than it is now. And if you're still distributing your podcast on your own personal website, and you have to pay to download MP3 files in order to listen to it, you are living in the past. And so I really hope nobody out there is still doing that, unless the podcast is so good that you would actually be willing to spend money in order to listen to it. I don't know. Maybe a lot of people, people will be willing to, pay money to listen to, I don't know, to Joe Rogan's podcast or something. I'm not sure, but something like that. But nowadays, you can do a podcast in multiple different formats now. Of course, you can go to the traditional route, and you can upload your podcast to iTunes, even though iTunes has really declined in popularity, because you have to pay for most of the content. I think, if not all of the content on iTunes, excuse me. And of course, you can also distribute your podcasts on SoundCloud or Bandcamp or anything like that. You can distribute your podcast on YouTube, of course, which is probably one of the most popular ways to do it. People do podcasts on Twitch now, which is another extremely popular website in order to do that. And something that you couldn't do with podcasts back in the day, back in the early 2000s and early and late 2000s, or even the early 2010s, is that there was no video aspect to any of these videos. And nowadays, you have podcasts where you have people who actually, who have face cams now, and people who actually, record themselves talking, and they have a camera for the main speaker, and they have a camera for all the guests and other co-hosts and things like that. Some people, in the case of Sterling, he uses a lot of people, such as Sterling, they use still graphics in order to give a visualization to the podcast. And that's not something that was characteristic of podcasts, because podcasts used to be strictly audio. And nowadays, people mix it up and combine a video with the podcast. And so I guess it would be considered more of like a video podcast if you're recording, if you're doing like a live cams of yourself and your guests and things of that sort. which because like back in the day you wouldn't have had the internet speed, or your computer might have not have been powerful enough to have all of these things work in conjunction with each other. And so nowadays, with high-speed internet available to so many people now, and with people who are being able to access more higher, more powerful computers, uh, you can do all sorts of stuff now. Like just with the software, I'm sure a lot of you know about it. OBS Studio, you can do so many different things with that software, and it's completely free, and I believe it's open source, and there's just so many different things that you can do with it, and you can just power it with just a simple laptop. Like I'm using a laptop from 2016. It's a Asus, and it's not the most powerful machine in the world, especially not anymore, because my computer's going to be turning 5 years old this year. But it still allows me to do everything, just about almost everything I'd allow it. I throw at it. I can easily record on Audacity. I think even computers up to like Windows XP can do that. But I can use OBS, and I can use virtual webcams, and I can input multiple different layers into OBS, and just streamline it all into one location. And sorry for the bumping, everybody. I kind of bumped my XLR cord a little bit, but you can do so many different things with just with a computer that isn't even that powerful in terms of modern technology. And I find that so fascinating, just how much technology has evolved, and not even just the past 5 to 10, even in the past 5 to 10 years. It's still not the same as it was even back then. And just technology is just rapidly accelerating. And I believe it's just been accelerating ever since the 90s, I would say. Back in the 90s, you started out with brick phones. You started out with Nokias and Motorola's, and nowadays, of course, once you got to like the mid 20 teens, you had the iPhone. You started getting the Samsung Galaxy. You started getting LG started making phones, and you had HTC and all these different cell phone companies. And before that, you had the flip phone, of course, with like the Motorola Razr and things like that. And then of course the iPhone comes with their touchscreen technology, and it just completely changes everything, and everybody jumps on that technology, and things just. And then there's just a mad race to create a better and better phone, to have basically to have a full functioning computer in your own hands. Like in this instance here, I have my LG V60, which I believe is one of the last phones from LG, because LG actually ceased their mobile phone operations earlier this year, which I find to be extremely unfortunate. Because I used to be a very big supporter of Galaxy phones, and my first phone was a Nexus S 4G phone, which was a phone made in collaboration with Google and Samsung. And ever since then, up until this phone, I used Samsung phones, and after that, I used the Galaxy S3, and then I used the Galaxy S6, and then I used the Galaxy S9 Plus. But once Apple started that trend a few years ago, where they got rid of the headphone jack, and they got rid of a few other features, but mainly the headphone jack, that really bothered me. And then people and then Android companies started doing the same exact thing, and Samsung eventually got rid of the headphone jack. And then things like I'm trying to think, like the Google Pixel got rid of the headphone jack. HTC got rid of the headphone jack. I'm trying to think of other ones. The OnePlus, they got rid of the headphone jack. And it was just such an unfortunate thing, because the headphone jack, in my opinion, is such a valuable thing. And I know a lot of people nowadays use Bluetooth technology so they can connect their earbuds and their speakers wirelessly. But you are guaranteed most of the time high quality audio if you used a wired connection, and you can't get fully lossless audio. If you're an audiophile, if you're very particular about your audio quality, you will want a headphone jack. And one thing that was special about LG's phones in particular is that with the LG V line of phones, which I feel bad that I never considered getting an LG until I was offered to upgrade earlier this year, and I opted to get the LG V60 because I heard a lot of good things about it, and I just wasn't satisfied with what Samsung was offering anymore. I finally opted in, and it's just unfortunate because there's just so many different disadvantages in not having a headphone jack. Because if you don't have one, you have to charge. If you're still using wired headphones or earbuds, you can't use your headphones or earbuds at the same time that you're charging your phone, unless you get a dongle that allows you to separate the two. And of course that costs money. And with the dongle, you have a very high chance of losing it. And with a headphone dongle, it's such a weird word, isn't it? Dongle. But in any case, it's just, you don't have optimal quality. You're losing a little bit of audio quality when you're doing that conversion, and it's just very annoying, and you have less options. And I was as I was gonna say, for the LG phones, the V60 line of phones, their headphone jacks actually come with something that is called a high. I'm trying to think of the word. It has a high quality DAC, which is a digital audio converter, and the higher quality of the DAC, the higher quality of the audio will be. And LG V60's phones, the LG V series of phones, are able to power very high impedance headphones, in which high impedance means the headphones need a lot of power in order to have a good loud signal. And if the impedance is, if the impedance is high, that means that you'll need, I believe it means you'll need less power. But if it's low impedance, that means you need higher power. I forgot. It was either or one of those. But I just bumped my phone into my desk. But in any case, for the LG V series of phones, I don't know any other company that also provided. I think HTC used to provide high quality DACs into their phones so they could get hi-fi audio. But in the case of those phones, they were able to power very studio quality headphones, and sometimes they can require a lot of power, a good quality headphone jack in order to get the optimal sound quality. And with these, with the new dongles and with getting rid of the headphone jack, it's just such a detriment, because if you're using studio headphones, you can't use them to their maximum potential anymore. And I know that's a really niche thing, and only a certain amount of people will actually care for that sort of thing. And the hi-fi audio community, the audiophile community, is very much a very small it's a very small portion of the market. I still find it unfortunate that there's becoming less and less options in the mobile phone world to have high quality audio. I mean, we're in the year 2021, and I would have expected that there would be a lot more options and a lot more to choose from in order to get maximum value out of your smartphone. But it seems like they're just going in a backwards direction and just going with whatever the most consumers want, which is understandable from a business point, obviously, because you want to get maximum profits. But but it's unfortunate because it's just for people who are marginalized, like the people who really enjoy hi-fi audio, listening like I do. I think it's just a setback for, and I just think it's a step in the wrong direction, and hopefully, uh, there'll be more competition from companies in the future to give us more options, because I think like major the only major corporation I can think that's still offering a headphone jack, I believe, is Sony with their Xperia line. And I think if I ever do upgrade to a new phone, I'd like to try a Sony phone and see how they are, because Sony puts a lot of great technology into this stuff. Unfortunately, a lot of their camcorders and their sound systems and their headphones and whatever, I think Sony's products are quite a bit overpriced, honestly. Like they always jack up the prices on their products, which I find unfortunate because, I mean, a lot of times their stuff is really good. Excuse me. And, excuse me. Sorry for that. And, it's just, it's like but it's unfortunate because it's like, in terms of smartphones, the Xperia is like one of like the last, smartphones personally that I would consider, using, as long as they keep the headphone jack, or possibly, maybe, I believe, actually, I take that back. Recently, I mentioned Nokia earlier. Nokia actually came back, a few years ago with new smartphones, and they're not technically Nokia anymore. I believe it's like, HMG or some other company I think it's from South Korea, or something of that sort. But they're using the Nokia brand, and they're coming out with new Android smartphones. And and Nokia, when it was actually still Nokia, they were producing, smartphones that had Windows operating system, Windows, mobile operating systems, and they were highly unpopular because people just did not like the interfaces, and there was a lot of compatibility issues and issues about updates and things of that sort, and they just weren't popular. But Nokia came back a few years ago, like I said, with Android phones, and they've been doing really well overseas. And, you can get a few of the models here in the U.S. It's just that you have to pay, full price for them, and like no like major carrier actually, offers, Nokia phones, which I find to be unfortunate. But, you can buy them, unlocked, which means you can use, different, which unlocked means you can use multiple different, cell phone towers in order to get a signal from it. Because there used to be a difference, because there's, GSM signals, so CDMA signals, something of that sort, where it would be separated into different types of signals for the same thing, like 4G or 5G or 3G, things like that. And, it's just unfortunate how in general there just seems to be just less variety when it comes to the products that you get, at least when it comes to electronics. Well, at least when it comes to like smartphones and computers and stuff, because laptops, I remember, back in the day, you could really, really, customize laptops, and laptops were filled to the brim with different connections and ports. I mean, in fact, my, mom, actually has a business laptop that she got, back in the early 2010s, and it comes with all sorts of different ports that you can't find. It has a switch on and off switch for the Wi-Fi. As it still comes with the Ethernet. A lot of laptops still come with the Ethernet port, but it comes with a FireWire card. It has I believe it has a PCI. I think it has an expansion card slot on the side of it. I think one of the only thing and it still has a, headphone and microphone port on it. And in a lot of cases of, laptops nowadays, it only comes with one port, either for the microphone or headphone, and I find that super unfortunate, because people still want to use wired mics and headphones, and for a lot of these, laptops, you got to use either or. And I think there's even laptops that don't even provide like a headphone jack or a microphone jack anymore. And my laptop actually does have an optical drive. It has a CD DVD drive, and that's something not a lot of laptops have anymore because, you know, I mean, CDs and DVDs in general have declined rapidly because of the rise of streaming services and online file sharing, of course. But still, I still find the CD and DVD drives to be very useful if you need to use, say, a backup disk in order to restore your computer if it gets corrupted, or if you have old DVDs or CDs laying around, or if you need to burn any like data to a DVD or CD and you don't have a flash drive, or you can't use or if you can't use a file cloud storage, then, or if you want to play like old CD-ROM games, like I have a few games from my childhood that are on CD-ROM, such as the first two Battlefront games from the early 2000s. I have a lot of Star Wars games. I have the Empire at War, Lego Star Wars, and stuff like that. And so you can, like, for some of those games, you can get them on Steam and such. But if I didn't have a CD-ROM drive, I'd have no way of playing them. And if you still want to play retro games, I would definitely still try to find a laptop that still has an optical drive. But I think nowadays, just the demand for it, it's just, there's like a lot of people see no reason to use it because it's just outdated technology. And plus two, it's moving parts, and you want less moving parts within your electronics, because say if you drop it, or if you just set it down in a wrong way, something could internally could break inside the computer. And that's another reason why hard disk drives, or HDD drives, have become highly unpopular. Because one of the things about hard disk drives is that it uses a physical magnetic disk in order to scan all of the files and all of the everything on your computer. And if you drop your computer, if you sit it on the ground, you could smash the disk, and you would lose all your data, and it'd be extremely hard in order to recover anything that was on that disk. And I would know so because I had an external hard drive that was an HDD drive, and I dropped it on the floor, and I've sent it to a repair place, and I said I'd have to send it to a very intensive repair place in order to retrieve all my data, just because I dropped it so hard. And it's so unfortunate because I have so many family photos and videos and stuff I've archived from the internet, music, all sorts of different things from my childhood up until like the mid 20 teens that are just lost now, just because I dropped it on the floor one day because I was using it downstairs with my laptop, and I got up and I forgot it was still plugged in, and it fell out of the port, and it just dropped right on the hard tile floor. So hopefully I'll be able to get those files recovered at some point in the future. But in any case, as I was saying, hard disk drives are unpopular not only because they can be easily broken, but also because hard disk drives are also quite a lot slower to load content, because you have to read, like I said, the physical magnetic disk in order to read all the files on your computer. But now with solid state drives, also known as SSDs, it uses flash memory. So it's basically like a large flash drive, for instance, and it just reads it like so much faster because you're not using a physical disk in order to read it. It just reads it off of flash memory, and it's a million times quicker. And I actually had that issue with my laptop that I'm currently using right now, in which I noticed that my computer was slowing up, like exponentially so, and it just kept slowing up more and more. And then at one point, my computer just decided not to work anymore, and it would just be stuck in a boot loop. And it was so distressing because I really needed to use my computer for school and for making video projects and things of that sort. And so I was so distraught. So I made sure to, I believe it actually happened. thankfully, thankfully I remember now. It did happen before I had to go back to college earlier in the year. It happened still when I was still on winter break, and honestly, if it happened at any other time, I would have been very, very short of luck. I'll just put it there. I'll just put it that way. But I sent it into a local repair place, and he replaced it with a solid state drive. And he said, like, I was a little bit skeptical at first because you always got to be a little bit skeptical when it comes to repair places. Don't just send your electronics to the cheapest, nearest repair place. I always stress to people that when it comes to anything, any service that you're looking for, whether it be food, whether it be repair for electronics, or going to a repair shop for your car, make sure you look at the reviews and look at what people say about that business before you go and try to get your stuff fixed. Because the last thing you want to do is be ripped off and have this unknown fee attached that you had no idea that you had to pay for. Because sometimes these people just add on fees to the services that you want, and without knowing, and something that originally costed, say, $50, and now costs like $125. And that's something you do not want. And you need to make sure that you're getting your money's worth, and that you're not dealing with people who are going to add these fees without being transparent with you, and make sure that they actually do a good job at what they do. That if they do a good repair, or if they make if they make good food and they serve you well and they just provide good service in general. So just always make sure to look at reviews, and just make sure you do your research before you do just about anything when it comes to services. And that can apply to multiple different things as well. Look at what other people say, and then go for it. But the only thing I wouldn't say to go for that for would be movies, because movie reviews are very subjective. And in my opinion, I don't think you should let other people's thoughts on a movie impair you from going to go watch a film. So, I mean, if you enjoy the film, then you enjoy it. You don't have to have anybody else you shouldn't let anybody else say you shouldn't watch this film unless it's legitimately bad for your health or something like that. But anyway, back to my computer repair story. So the repairman actually said that my computer would boot up exponentially faster. And I remember my PC, my laptop rather. It would take, I don't know, maybe almost like 3 to 4 minutes just to boot up into the computer, and then once I finally logged in, I would put in my information, and it would take like another minute or two just to load everything on my desktop. But now with a solid state drive, with the SSD, it loads up so much faster. It just blew my mind how much faster it actually was. In order to boot up my computer to restart it, it only takes not even, I would say, booting up from the computer when it's off up to the login screen, it only takes, say, maybe 20 to 30 seconds, which is I find it to be extremely impressive. And then after you log in, it takes another maybe 30 to 40 seconds to load everything on my desktop, which is exponentially faster than what my original hard drive did. And so, but believe it or not, though, there are still alternatives. There are still, I should say, benefits to using hard disk drives. So even though the chance of a solid state drive of going bad is lower, I believe, than hard disk drives, if something does go wrong with your solid state drive, though, it is a lot more difficult to recover your data from a solid state drive, because since it's flash memory and it's not physical, since it's not a physical disk, it's stored in a different way, which is and makes it a lot more challenging for technicians to get that data off and restore it and retrieve it. and it can be nearly almost impossible in order to recover that data. But for a hard disk drive, on the other hand, because it's a physical piece of media, you could still technically say if the disk is shattered, you could still put it together, and you can scan it and still recover data that way. And I believe that's why a lot of external hard drives actually are hard disk drives, because in most of the cases, as long as you don't drop it, you should be able to go to a data repair place, and they should be able to get a majority of the files off of that hard drive. And in my case, my hard drive within my computer, because there was nothing else wrong with it. Since the disk, of course, was still intact with my hard disk drive in my laptop, he was able to scan all of my files and all of my system settings and transfer it to a SSD drive without really any hitches at all. And I was just so amazed that he could copy all of it like that when my hard disk basically went bad. I found that pretty amazing that he was able to do that. And I would definitely, when it comes to an internal hard drive for your PC or your laptop, I would definitely make sure you spend a little bit extra money if you can afford it. Definitely get a laptop or a PC that has a SSD drive. And I know that computers that have hard disk drives are cheaper, but they are exponentially slower when it comes to even just doing basic tasks like opening the internet or using your video editor or playing games on your PC, on your laptop. It's just so much slower loading all of your data on your laptop. But if you have a solid state drive, it will be exponentially faster. But at the same time, if you want to back up your data though, definitely go with external hard drives that are HDD. And because a lot of times with hard disk drives, the external ones, you can get them for pretty cheap nowadays. I believe a 2 terabyte external hard drive only goes for maybe $125, maybe $150. In which back in the day, in order to get a terabyte hard drive, those things used to cost $500, $600, $800, and the prices have just exponentially just decreased over time. And so I'd definitely say if you're concerned about your computer going bad at any time, please look into getting external hard drives, making sure to transfer all of your data to an external hard drive, or if you can afford it, maybe use cloud storage too, because I would say cloud storage, even though I would say there would be a lot of benefits to it, a lot of the times it's a paid service, and you got to pay a considerable amount of money each month or yearly in order to afford all of that storage. And being a broke college student, I can't afford to pay $29 a month or just pay $200 a year to have 2 terabytes of storage to store all of my stuff. It's just not a viable option. So even though cloud storage is usually very reliable and has a very low chance of going wrong, unless say there's a data breach or something like that, I still wouldn't go for cloud storage unless it was extremely dirt cheap affordable. And plus too, I would say if you just wanted to be even more secure with your data, just have it right there with you and be able to access it with you at all times. Definitely get an external hard drive, preferably one that's a hard disk drive, because if something does happen to it, even if it does go bad, there's still a very high chance that you would be able to recover that data, since it is a physical disk that they can scan and then transfer to a new medium so you can access all of your files again. And so the chance, and that's another topic that I'd like to get into, that because of hard drive failures, sometimes you may have videos of your own or other people's videos that you've archived over the years, and then the hard drive fails, and then you go onto the internet to find that video and you can't find it anywhere. And that's one of the ways how you can how lost media can become a reality for in online circles. There's all sorts of lost online media over the years that either hard drives have failed and the original files are gone, or somebody like deleted all instances of the video and you can't find it anywhere. There's all sorts of different things on the internet that I cannot find anymore. Videos that have been privated or unlisted or deleted on YouTube, websites that have gone under over the years and just non-existent anymore. So many different things I've encountered over the years that are just gone, and there's just no traces of them left, and it makes me so sad. And it makes me, it's an important. In my opinion, it's very important that there's people out there that actually actively go out of their way to try and archive digital media, because believe it or not, despite how fast things can spread on the internet, there's still a chance that all those things, especially the older the content on the internet, the more likely it is to be, erased completely. And I do find it extremely admirable that that people are actively archiving different websites and archiving music and video and audio, even podcasts, anything at all. And one of the biggest websites for that actually is archive.org, which I personally use. And they archive millions upon hundreds of millions of different websites each and every single day. There's all sorts of documents and audio and music and videos being uploaded to there every day. And it's just a magical thing, coming across something that, you thought might have been lost forever. And then you just one day you see it pop up on YouTube, or you see it popped up on archive.org, and you're just like, wow, I thought this was lost forever. And, I'm just so grateful for people who are conscious of the archival of digital media. And I just think it's just an extremely important thing to do. I think it's very imperative that we archive our internet history. And I believe it's also very important that we archive our physical history too. Like say your old childhood videos. If you grew up in the late 90s or even the early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, your parents or one of your relatives might have recorded you on a camera, and that camera most likely used videotape in order to capture your memories. And in a lot of these cases, they recorded onto say like 8mm. Usually it would be 8mm tape or mini DV tape or VHS tape. And over time, those tapes, if they're not properly taken care of, they can easily degrade. And they and then once you and VCRs sometimes can get unreliable, and it can eat up that tape, and it can damage that tape to a state where it's not playable anymore, and then you lose those memories. And so I think it's more imperative than ever, especially nowadays, because a lot of these tapes are reaching like 10, 15, 20, 25 plus years of age. And in some of these cases, like some of these people did not store their tapes very well. And so it's important that all these memories are preserved, and people either do the transferring themselves, go out of the way to get a camcorder that can play these tapes back, and they can plug them into their computer or plug into a different digital video capture device and record it to SD card or to DVD discs, or to, like I said, or go to a professional to get it transferred, or just anything at all. And that's something I still need to personally do, because I still have a lot of childhood videotapes that I still need to transfer, and some of the earliest ones are actually from like from around like 1999, and my parents still have their wedding video from 1997 on VHS that needs to be transferred, and all sorts of other things that, if they're not transferred in the next few couple of years, I mean, they might just start degrading to a point where you can't even be able to watch them anymore. And I think it's so important that we preserve our memories from the past, whether it be physical media on our, whether it be childhood videos on videotape, or if it's some old video that you remember watching. Just make sure to archive the things that you hold dear to yourself, because you never know when they might just suddenly disappear one day off of the internet. You just never know. And so, with that said, I hope all of you who have tuned into this podcast have been enjoying themselves. I hope I did a good job as a host. I wouldn't really know if I would say that I'm as good of a podcaster as Sterling, because I mean he's been doing this for a little bit while now. Let's see, I believe he actually started the podcast back I think a year ago. Yeah, a year ago. So he's already got a good deal of experience under his belt. But I hope I've been a good stand-in for the time, and I hope he appreciates me standing in for him, because I really wanted to do this podcast and be able to help him out. And I hope he didn't mind any of the topics that I covered. And I'd like to apologize if I have a different bit of a way of speaking than he does, because I do know that Sterling likes to speak in a more relaxed tone. Sometimes I can get a bit overexcited, and my voice can really amplify whenever I'm really passionate about a topic. And if it was a little bit of if it was a little bit much to get used to, I sincerely apologize for that. And but hopefully Sterling will be back to do his podcast soon. But I was very glad to fill in for him. I definitely wanted to help a friend out and help him, continue this series while he's away. I believe, like I said, on vacation with his family. And I'm always more than happy and willing to do voiceovers and do fill-ins for podcasts for anybody who might need a stand-in. As long as it's not a podcast that I wouldn't find objectable, something that's like offensive or like intentionally provocative and controversial, then yeah, I'll definitely stand in for somebody's podcast if they need a host. And I was more than happy to do it for Sterling, because he as far as I know, he's a wonderful person. He's very down to earth, very relaxed, very mild mannered, and it's always lovely to see that those kinds of personalities from people, because for me personally, I would say that would be the personality type I get along with, more introverted, more laid back and calm personalities. That's I would say that without any reasonable doubt in my mind. And with my LG phone yet again dropping on my desk, I hope each and every single one of you had a wonderful time listening into the Radio 1471. This has been your host, A.G. Yeen. And I don't know how Sterling would feel about doing a little bit of self-promotion, because it is his podcast, of course. But if Sterling has any social media links of his, definitely check it out. Definitely check out his Radio 1471 Twitter account. And make sure to tune in for the other separate podcast. And if you guys want to check me out and check any of my social media out, you can find me on Twitter as AG Yeen, AGYEEN. And if you ever want to, if you're a furry and you're looking for any, if you're looking for a community if you're looking for a nice inclusive community with a bunch of people who are willing to be your friend and listen now and and care for you and treat you as like an online family member, I do also host a Discord server known as AG's Family of Floof. And Sterling actually is a member of that server, and I hope he enjoys that. I hope he's been enjoying the place, and I think that's kind of a silly thing to kind of question, because I think he has. But anyway, but I never want to be too sure about things. It's just the kind of person I am. But in any case, if you'd like to try that out, if you're looking for a nice inclusive community where people are actively looking to be your friend and you're looking for people to talk to who are in the furry community, if you're looking for someplace that's not filled with toxicity or drama and things like that sort, definitely feel free to check my place out if you'd like. Definitely don't want to force you. to do anything you don't want, obviously. But if you'd like to check it out, definitely feel free. Because we're always looking for new online family members to add to our server. That is definitely for certain. But in any case, I hope you all enjoyed this podcast. I'm sorry if it was a little bit different than the usual topics that Sterling usually covers, and I hope this iteration of the podcast will be just as enjoyable. And so I wish you all a wonderful morning, a wonderful afternoon, a wonderful evening, a wonderful night, wherever you are. Just Godspeed and peace to all of you. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. And yes, thank you so much for listening in. And make sure to tune in for next episode. Thank you.